Well, I'm up on Onken Head near the Steve Hislop Memorial with me, Tina Brennan. We're starting early, I know, but we're looking at this moment in time towards what you're going to be doing, what the Isle of Man's going to be doing for remembering the 50 people who died at Summerland, because next year will be 50 years, won't it? Which is that sort of key moment, and we're still in this sort of limbo land. So I thought, get you back on, because I know you've got some ideas of what you want to do again about the museum and that sort of thing. So let's start with that. Is it a museum as such, or is it just a collection of things to bring together for that day?
Well, I don't know what the Isle of Man are doing. I can't speak for anyone else. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
And what I intend to do is to get together a small exhibition of memorabilia in time for the 50th anniversary around the 2nd of August. It might be 2, 3, 4 days, but I'm just in the very initial stages of planning it at the moment. So I've still to source a venue, which I've got a couple in mind, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm hoping that members of the public will get on board, and I know some people do have memorabilia.
What sort of things are we talking about here?
Well, newspaper cuttings, which people have collected. Even things like T-shirts. I know there was T-shirts that were printed for, I'm talking the first Summerland here now. And posters, tickets, brochures, pamphlets, whatever people have got really, I'd like to include it.
There's so many untold stories, I reckon, that's still out there. Don't you think so? Because people just shut this whole thing away for so long. And
Paul, I get people every other week that contact me and say, first of all, the 50th anniversary is coming up. What is planned for it? Because they know I've got a Facebook page, Summerland Fire. If anybody wants to contact me via that means with details on their memorabilia, I'd be very grateful. Or if they want to phone me, it's 424 806. And I mean, just the other week, 3 guys who were here at the time of the fire, who now live in Whitehaven, got in touch to ask what was going on, and they told me their story, and they were very lucky to get out alive, as most of the people were who were in there on that night.
See, everyone's got a story, haven't they? Everyone's got a story.
I'm so. When I first started doing this campaigning for a memorial on the site, it was 2013, and I got a petition together, paper and online, and I put the paper one out all over the island. Basically, I went travelling everywhere that was open. I put it on their counters. And as soon as I said the word Summerland, it was like the light bulb moment, and people would say, my dad was a fireman, my auntie was a nurse, she went back into work. We were going to go there, but we didn't go there that night. And so many stories. It's like you scratch the surface of anybody who was here at that time, and they all have a memory and a recollection of it.
The Guardian did quite a big piece. I know you were involved in helping that to happen. I mean, I know it could have even been longer, you said, but I mean, it's still quite a moment to explain to a lot of people still about what went on.
Well, that Guardian piece, I was very impressed with the journalist, Sally Williams, because she was very factual, and everything in that piece I know is factually correct. And the people who spoke on it spoke from the heart. And I think when you read stuff like that, it brings it home to you that this fire hasn't gone away. There's no sweeping it under the carpet and hoping that nobody will mention it again. It's there. People are still dealing with what they have to deal with.
And I say 50 years will be that sort of moment, won't it? I mean, it's still in limbo, I gather. I mean, it's always on the sale, but it's not going anywhere, is it, at the minute, the site?
Well, it's been for sale since 2008. It was put on the market for $5 million. There were no viable takers for that. The only one that was in the running was when David Cretney was head of DOI, and he told me when I handed over the petition, which he didn't particularly want to receive, because the petition he would only receive in private in his office with no press, no media, no photographers, just me and him. Thankfully Bill Henderson came along as well for support. But yeah, I mean, the company that was in negotiation to buy the site at the time of when the 40th memorial was unveiled, it dragged on for I think something like 3 years. And eventually Alan Bell stood up in Tynwald and said, that company has gone into administration. And I was flabbergasted because they were about to sign heads of agreement. David Cretney as being head of DOI. So why were they negotiating with a company that was about to go into administration?
It's going into long grass again, isn't it, basically, I suppose, in all sorts of ways. Oh, by the way, the reason we're doing it up here is this is where you were watching the proceedings that night.
Yeah.
Does it feel like yesterday still, or was it in a way?
Not the layout of it now, because it's lovely the way that it's been done, but then it was just a scrubby piece of ground with some bushes around the sides. And there was maybe about 24 of us stood here eventually before a fireman came up and told us we'd have to move because there's tanks at the back of Summerland, and if they exploded we would be in direct line. But so far as the actual watching of the fire, I could see it as though it was yesterday. It's like I wasn't aware of any noise, anybody talking here, or sound, or the smell of the fire, or anything. It was like tunnel vision, because you were on roof level height with it, and you know it's like you could touch, just reach out and touch it, really. So that stayed with me all of these years, and yes, it affected me because of, while I was standing here, 50 people were breathing their last in that building, and I knew people would be dying in that building, and I knew instinctively, and I was only 19, but I knew that that fire wasn't just an accident. That fire was caused by people who were negligent, and I believe that very strongly to this day. There was gross negligence involved in the fire at Summerland, and its construction, its operation, its design. The inquiry report highlighted all of that.
But no one was to blame us. Really, as such, was it? I mean, they didn't really.
No one was.
See it.
When do we ever have culpability on this island? It just doesn't happen even today. And back then, a huge event like this, which was worldwide at the time, there was no way anybody was going to resign or be sacked. And the inquiry reports made sure about that. You might be interested to know, which I discovered later, many years later, was that the three-man commission who was set up to deal with the inquiry report, the lead of them was a gentleman called Justice P. Cantley, who was a QC in the UK. Now, Justice P. Cantley, you might think would have been an independent person, because it was touted that this inquiry would be totally independent, but only 3 or 4 years previously he had been our judge of the Court of Appeal here on the island. So he would have known the Attorney General's Chambers members, he would have known the MHKs, which apparently he went out for drinks and meals with them anyway at the time. He would have known the higher ranks of the police force.
So potentially some sort of corruption even those days. We're dealing with more at the minute, as you know, with other things. But
well, how independent could that be? You know, I mean, to act as judge and jury in an inquiry report was far above their remit. What should have happened, as would happen with the Grenfell Tower inquiry, is that those findings will go to the police to decide whether or not anybody should be held accountable. That was never going to happen here. It was all whitewashed, and
because the nature was we just wanted to move on, didn't we? Don't say we. The Isle of Man just wanted to bury this story and move it on, and no one talked about things for ages, really, did they? It was all just kept quiet.
We didn't get the chance to, because I know for a fact from an ex-chief minister who's a family member, is that there was. This is what he told me when I chatted with him about it. There was a conscious decision for elected representatives to remain silent on the issues surrounding the Summerland fire at the time. Right. And that, I said to him, well, that means at some point they sat down in private and said, we're going to keep stum on this, boys. Let's just keep it quiet. And that's what happened. So we never got the chance to commemorate on an annual basis. There was no memorial from the first anniversary of the fire. There was never going to be that situation.
Well, just finish this off with, if people got anything out there, I mean, obviously, like you compare this to Grenfell, when everyone had cameras, for instance, back then there was very little things. One thing I'm interested in was the year it went up, the Isle of Man made those films to show off the Isle of Man. They were big touristy films, tourist board films. And from what I understand, and I have to use alleged in here because I was told from a very good source, but I can't prove it. Someone went back into the files, into those, and they were on film in those days, and they took out everything to do with Summerland, you know, because all of it in its heyday, there's hardly anything showing it going, and someone out there may have even more material from the actual night of the fire. I mean, they've been keeping it, but you know, now's the time to come forward, and you can send that to me if you want, or to you. You can get hold of me at news@manx.net. Is one of the emails that works best, but it's now or never for all sorts. And can you imagine? I know that's the Aquadrome, but 50 years later, still there.
Yeah. Well, I've been chasing the Manx Development Corporation to get something on site in the way of a memorial, which I have a plan for, a memorial along with a small museum, an information centre, and I want a digital recording facility there so that people who do come to the site can put down their thoughts, their experiences of the first Summerland for future generations. It's so important that future generations know of what can go wrong when you abrogate responsibility for yourself into the hands of people who have a totally different agenda. You know, I mean, I've mentioned before the word corporate manslaughter, which I've had lawyers' letters about.
Have you?
Yeah, I'll show you soon. I'll put it with you. Because if corporate manslaughter legislation had been on the statute books back then the parents of those children who were killed on the night of the fire might have had a legal framework in which to conduct chasing people through the courts. They just wanted somebody to answer for what had happened to their children, but they managed to get Trust House 40 to court on the basis of suing them for damages, and they were awarded damages, something in the teens of pounds, but Trust House 40's lawyers appealed against it and they reduced it. I think it was a figure below £10 eventually per death of their child.
£10?
Yes, because they obviously didn't want to have people suing them for, you know, thousands and thousands, or the Isle of Man government, or Douglas Council. So yes, it's my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion, is that they were guilty of corporate manslaughter.
And the lawyers' letters, what they're trying to do is stop it. What are they trying to say? Stop?
Yeah.
To cease and desist? Or oh my goodness.
It's not a very long one. I can read it to you if you like.
Go on.
This goes back to 2018. Now, when I got this, Paul, I thought it was quite funny, and I still do think it's quite funny, that they would be still so twitchy that they'd have to get their lawyers to write to me. Okay.
Bleep any names out if you have to, but
no, there's no names.
Okay.
No names.
Go on.
No names, no pack drill.
Right.
All right. Okay. So this is dated 28th of August 2018. Dear Madam, re Summerland, we act for Douglas Borough Council. This is Callan Wilde. We are instructed to write to you in relation to recent comments in the media, in brackets the Mandate programme on Manx Radio on the 6th of August 2018, which I have to say I was never on. So where they got it from.
The wrong day or the wrong place or the wrong time or what?
Yeah.
It wasn't you that day? Okay.
In which you have called for Douglas Borough Council to be charged with corporate manslaughter as a result of the events which occurred at Summerland on the evening of the 2nd of August 1973. Which isn't true, because nobody's going to be done for corporate manslaughter now at this day and age. It should have been done earlier.
Yes.
We also understand that you have called for Douglas Borough Council to publicly apologise for the Summerland disaster and appear to be blaming Douglas Borough Council for the events at that time. Well, they should apologise. They should apologise because of what they actually did in facilitating galbestos instead of reinforced concrete and oroglass instead of glass or something more suitable.
Well, flameproof and fireproof.
Yeah, those are totally flammable materials. The events which occurred on the evening of the 2nd of August 1973 were a national tragedy which had tragic consequences for a large number of people and have left a lasting memory with many more. The events were, however, not the fault of Douglas Borough Council, and in those circumstances it would not be appropriate for Douglas Borough Council to be subject to corporate manslaughter charges or to publicly apologise, therefore. Following the fire, the Lieutenant Governor appointed a commission of inquiry, which I've just explained about, chaired by the then Mr Justice Cantley. As we are sure you are well aware, the Commission of Inquiry made many recommendations which have been adopted, not just in the Isle of Man, but in the United Kingdom and further afield. In relation to fire regulations relating to theatres and other such public buildings, Douglas Borough Council was, however, not in any way held responsible for the fire by the Commission of Inquiry. Okay. Well, they made sure about that.
When was this dated?
2018.
Oh, 18, so
Yep.
some time ago.
Yep. In the circumstances, we would respectfully request that you refrain from making any further comments in the local media calling for Douglas Borough Council to be charged with corporate manslaughter. Such comments are not helpful.
Interesting tone, isn't it? I'm not sure. Is it more of just a little, like keep quiet, basically? I don't know.
It doesn't make any difference to me what it is, to be honest.
No.
I have a right to my
You have
opinion.
Yeah.
And that's it. I stand by it. As far as they're mentioning here, the fire regulations were updated. Our fire regulations at the time of the Summerland fire were archaic. Nobody thought to ensure that people would be safe in that building with robust fire safety legislation by the Isle of Man government. And in that respect, yes, they are culpable for that, because it's believed up to 5,000 people, some say 10,000 people at its fullest capacity could go into Summerland. So as far as the fire regulations, yes, we brought the fire regulations up to the level of what they were in the UK, the United Kingdom. That's all we did. As often happens, it was copied and pasted into our legislation. Then at a point in the future, it was tweaked to include cladding as well. So that's the extent of how we weren't forerunners in fire safety legislation. We just did exactly what the UK had done previously.
And it appeared to some that corners had been cut when they put it up.
Corners were definitely cut. Yeah. You only have to read the inquiry report to know the extent of Douglas Borough Council, in their wisdom back then, decided that they would issue a waiver to their bylaws so that they could install galbestos, which was bitumen-coated cladding, which looked like reinforced concrete, but it wasn't. If it had been reinforced concrete, we wouldn't be sitting here now.
It was the Auroglass got me, because at school we used to work with it and we used to have fun lighting it until someone put it together saying that's the stuff that Summerland roof and the glass bits, well, the see-through bits, and it dripped. We lit it, a sharp corner would easily light, and it just dripped, and the flames would just go down like raining flames. Incredible thought. That was exactly for that half-hour period. Well, if you weren't killed by anything else, probably that got you, wouldn't it?
And people were very badly burned because of that on their heads and the backs of their legs, etc.
Right.
But that wasn't the catalyst to the fire. Everybody thinks it was Auroglass. It wasn't. It was the galbestos.
Oh, okay.
Because when those three lads lit that match, and that's all it took, was a match, set fire to some papers in that old kiosk, it fell against the galbestos. Okay, it burnt through, and members of staff tried. They did the wrong things because bless them, they hadn't been given proper training by Trust House 40. So that galbestos burnt through, built up fumes in the voids. There was a chimney effect, an explosion. The Auroglass took flame. This was in the space of like half an hour, and I watched it. Half an hour. That's all it took.
Okay, well listen, we'll come back. We'll talk more. One more time for your information to get hold of you. Is
via my Facebook page, which is Summerland Fire, one word, or you can call me or text me on 424 806.
And the code for the Isle of Man is 07624, and if you're international, it's +44 7624. And I hope you get some more. And I said, I'd really love to see that footage, any footage that we haven't already seen, because all that helps to remember what was there and
Well, we have a charity set up now, and part of the objects of the charity are to educate and to raise awareness of the fire and the events surrounding it. So that's what I will be doing. So I'm not going to go anywhere, although I'm sure people would wish I would go somewhere, but I knew I'd be here for the long haul.